second.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So my name is Rahima, and I work for the Northern Care Alliance Group. I'm the head of people development. I've got a background in terms of widening participation through local authority work as well as FE and HE. And as Sue said, it's a three-way presentation, and hopefully you'd be able to feed into this as well. We're good to go to the next slide, please, Sue. Just wanted to give you an overview of some of the work that we're doing, and which feeds into this slide that Sue's just put up around the NHS workforce. There's different routes into the NHS, and there's different programmes, and we're looking today around alternative methods of that recruitment and how we create that pipeline into the NHS, really, and targeting specific cohorts as well. Thanks, Sue. Next slide. We'd really welcome you to join the discussions, so the Menti through the Mentimeter or as well as the chat as well. We've got the code for the Mentimeter on there as well, and if you could log on, that would be great. Your feedback would be really welcome. I will pass you over to Jamie.
Yeah, thanks, Rahima. So if everyone can get the Menti up, we've got a question for you to start off with. I can't get my words out. It's not good for a Monday, is it? So whilst you're getting that up, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Jamie, and I'm the head of widening participation for Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust. So me and my team do similar work to some of Rahima's team over at Northern Care Alliance. So the first thing that we kind of want you to think about, but rather than us giving you all the answers, we kind of want you to start by kind of telling us what you think, and then we'll kind of give you the answers afterwards. So the first question really is trying to think about, so we're talking today about our local communities, about people from our local communities, people who are our patients, people who use our services, people that might fall into lots of different demographic groups. What barriers what barriers might we have to engage in these people from our local communities? What is it that they find difficult about coming to work within health and social care? So hopefully, I think some answers should start showing up if there are some, Sue, hopefully. But I'm going to talk you through it anyway, but I just wanted to get some thoughts from you and make sure, yeah, that you're still awake and with us. Last time it did just come up, didn't it?
It did just come up. I'm having some Menti issues today. It's not playing ball. Can you see what I can see? It says one answer.
Yeah, someone's put an answer. We just don't know what it is.
I'm gonna have to do this live. Just bear with me.
Oh, 6 answers. We've got lots of answers. We just can't see them.
So if you just click enter, it'll.
Will it come up? I've not seen this one before.
Your keyboard. Oh yeah, I think you've done yeah. You just press enter.
It didn't do this when we did it in person.
It didn't. No.
Yeah.
It wouldn't, would it?
It was the same. Up, Sophie.
Is it not working?
No, it's not working today. Apologies for this technical issue. Just let me stop sharing for a second. And it is just a copied presentation, so I'm not quite sure why. Right, okay, let me reshare. It's now decided to come up. Let's hope the other ones work straightforward. There we go. Can you see that? Come out of it completely and re-present.
There we go. Perfect.
Yay.
Yeah, so lots of ideas there about, again, yeah, the kind of current the kind of profile, information available, awareness of the different types of roles available. Family expectations is an interesting one. In the work that my team do, we have a lot of young people whose families want them to be doctors and nothing else. And healthcare is not just made on doctors, is it? IT access, travel and pay is a really interesting one as well at the moment, and affordability, because obviously cost of living crisis, the bus and the tram have gone up. Not to make this too political, because we're in Purda, aren't we? So we're probably not supposed to, but NHS wages, as I think are all aware, have not gone up in line with other costs. If I'm allowed to say that. It's true, isn't it? I'm not saying anything that's not true. So if you flick me on to, I'll just show some of the ideas that we came up with on our slide. So really, it's kind of, I think, people's level of experience and confidence, because if I had money for every Band 2 job advert I saw that said people need 5 years NHS experience, I wouldn't even need to have a job. We really do need to kind of challenge managers on their kind of assumptions around who is out there looking for work at the moment, and also who is needed to do these jobs, because a lot of our entry level jobs are entry level for a reason. Like, you shouldn't need lots of experience and lots of qualifications. We find that actually a lot of the people that we work with that are potentially unemployed have really, really good skills, lots of personal experience, the right kind of qualities, but being out of work can really impact someone's confidence. Or even people that have been out of work for kind of maybe even a short period, relatively linked to caring responsibilities, been on maternity leave, it does actually, a lot of people do find coming back into work daunting. Our application and interview process is not, it does a job, but we use the same application and interview process, particularly in the NHS rather than the social care world, for chief execs is what we do for, again, admin assistants. That we make everybody do a track application, make everybody write a personal statement. For the majority of entry level jobs, you don't need to write anything of that great length ever. So why we test people on that, it just makes no sense. That actually the hoops we make people jump through are quite complicated, and actually is it about us helping people navigate that process, or is it about making that process different for different levels of job? Because I'm not saying for every job we need to do this, but for some jobs, particularly where we're competing with other sectors, so for entry level roles where people don't need to have specific qualifications, like for nurses, we just compete with each other, don't we? We don't compete with the private sector as much, whereas for people that are looking for maybe like an entry level pharmacy stores role, we're competing with Amazon warehouses, there's lots of other employers that we're competing with, hospitality, retail, so we need to look at that. So that's where the kind of competitive labour market comes in as well, and the pay issue. I saw an advert recently, like a thing on Twitter, is like relation to the doctor's strikes, but I think it was a hospitality, like a bar, that was paying £18 an hour. So we aren't able to we do need to kind of up our game in this competitive labour market. But I think what we offer that other organisations don't is kind of career and development opportunities. Pension is still holding on, isn't it? That we've got lots of opportunities for people, and that's what we really need to sell. People's access and perceptions and awareness of what's out there. We all know it's not just doctors and nurses, there's lots and lots of different roles, but actually, do our communities understand that? Educational outcomes, a lot of entry-level jobs that ask for English and maths quals. Again, everyone needs to be able to communicate, need to be able to read and write, they need to be able to do some kind of basic maths, but actually GCSE level maths is really, really, I would struggle with it now, and I did A-level maths. Like it's not, I think qualifications are a good marker, and perhaps when we had a less competitive labour market and people wanted to come and work for the NHS, we could use qualifications as a way of whittling it down. But actually, again, we're kind of, if about 10% of people in Greater Manchester don't have English and maths qualifications, are we saying that 10% of people, we don't want them to come and work for us? Because I'm quite sure we probably do. And I know for NHS roles, there is some guidance in Agenda for Change around qualifications. But again, we can always, that is recommended, and actually we can say, that people can have equivalent experience, people can be willing to work towards qualifications, and a lot of L&D teams and a lot of adult education providers provide free of charge English and maths support, so people can be working and studying those quals at the same time. People's availability for work, the number of people that are economically inactive has really grown since the pandemic. So that is people that are unemployed but are not available for work. So usually the main reasons for that are to do with family caring reasons or university students, so you're of working age but you're not available for work. However, long-term health conditions and disabilities has become a real big group there. And actually, for some of those people, it's not, and even people with caring responsibilities or people with disabilities, it's not that they can't work, it's just the types of work that they can do and when they can work and where they can work. And I still think we're not quite there with our flexibilities in all areas and kind of rigidity around shift patterns and things. And that's something that, again, other sectors are doing that, and we need to keep up with that to compete. So I've talked about kind of, reasonable adjustments and kind of people's mental and physical health being increasingly, that's what we see, people that are unemployed are presenting with more complex mental and physical health problems, which stresses even more that these people are our patients. Support networks is another thing, and actually kind of having that confidence and people around you to encourage you to apply for work, and travel and affordability we've talked about. So these are all the problems, but the next slide we'll kind of talk about some of the things some of the things that we can do. So there's lots and lots of different ways of bringing people in, as Rahima's kind of first slide has shown. So there's lots of different programs there, and I've also kind of put a bit of a list of the different types of people that we're trying to help, because widening participation teams, kind of L&D teams, what we will focus on different interventions for different groups, because it's not a kind of one size fits all. So a lot of work we do is with unemployed people, but also work with young people, and then people that have experienced various different disadvantages, such as being from an area where there's lots of disadvantage, being involved in the criminal justice system, being in the local authority care system. There's lots and lots of things that might mean that people are less likely to be able to access education, employment and training, which is where the various different programs come in. So I'm not going to kind of touch on them too much, but it's just to, I guess, raise people's awareness that there's, to use a phrase, more than one way to skin a cat, isn't there? There's lots of different ways we can bring people in, and it might be that some of these organisations, so bigger organisations like mine and Rahima's, do all of these things. But for a social care provider or a GP practice, it might be that you can just do one or two of these things, or it might be that you can offer some opportunities as part of these programmes, but you can't host a full programme in yourself. But all of the programmes on the right hand side are really about giving people a chance to demonstrate their skills and experiences, either through a work placement or a training programme, rather than a traditional application interview method. The exact targeting and length of programmes do vary based on the type of programme, but the general theory is the same, that it's a chance for people to come into our organisations in a slightly different way, but being able, still given a different opportunity to showcase their skills and experiences and show that they're going to be a really good member of our staff. So if you just come on to my last bit, and then I'm going to hand back over to Rahima, it's just to kind of really reiterate why we do this. When I do this internally, I flip it around and I start with this bit, but for this presentation, we've kind of gone at it that way around. So health inequalities is something that should be a focus for all of us working in health and social care. Obviously, NHS have got Core 20+5 is a real big driver. Lots of work going on nationally, locally, regionally around health inequalities. But the argument for that is essentially 80% of what happens to somebody, people's health outcomes, is nothing to do with the health and social care system. Actually, the social determinants of health account for about 40% of people's health. So if you have got a higher level of education, you're more likely to be in employment, you're more likely to have enough money coming in, you're more likely to have secure housing, you're more likely to have community infrastructure around you, you're less likely to undertake risk-taking behaviours like drug and alcohol use, have a good diet. All of these things mean that you are then less likely to get something that we call like preventable death, so from kind of long-term conditions and things. So as health and social care providers, this is part of our core business to actually use our opportunities as an employer to help our communities live well. It's not just about treating patients, it's about that kind of more holistic approach. Diversity and having a diverse and representative workforce is really important. In all our organisations will have some form of diversity strategy. It's a key golden thread of the GM People Plan and the NHS National People Plan that we need to have people. We treat people from all walks of life, therefore our staff bodies need to be representative, and these programmes are proven to bring in more diverse people because we remove some of the barriers that people find are in the way, particularly for people with disabilities and people from Black and Asian and minority ethnic communities. We're all anchor organisations, particularly, I would say, argue even smaller health and social care organisations like GP practices. Like, you are never going to physically move your business to another part of the country or another part of the world. Our organisations are always going to exist rooted in our communities because that's where we provide our patient care. So as collectively a large employer or individually as a large employer, we have a responsibility to create job opportunities and make sure that our local communities can access those job opportunities. We all know that there's recruitment challenges. We all know about that, don't we? That's kind of something that's a real pressure at the moment. Some of these programmes can address really short-term issues. So we've had a lot of successes with filling Band 2 roles more quickly that we sometimes struggle to fill at Advert through some of the stuff that Sue's going to talk about, or actually some of the work we're doing with young people and the pipeline stuff. Yeah, they're not going to come and work for us next week, but in 5 years' time, we still need as many people to come and work here when we all need care as well. And then just finally, a lot of these programmes have been shown to kind of have a reduction in staff turnover and a reduction in absence because people are coming in a supported way. They know what to expect and they've got a loyalty and a commitment to the organisation because they've been given an opportunity. So again, just to bear in mind the financial argument, because that's often the reason why we say we can't do things. Is because of the finances. So I'll stop there with my lecture. I feel like getting a bit preachy this afternoon, and I'll hand over to Rahima to kind of talk about a bit more about how we can do some of these things from a more abstract perspective.
Thanks, Jamie. Can we go into the next slide, please? Thank you. So Jamie's gone through the cohorts and some of the programs and why we do it. So now I just wanted to focus on how do we actually go about widening the participation. So a few pointers there in terms of community access points, and what I mean by that is actually you probably have heard of the phrase hard to reach. I don't believe in such things like hard to reach. I think we are hard to access, and it's about going to specific community access points. So for young people, it may be a youth centre. For example, it may be faith organisations, etc. Those are community access points. So where people are likely to be found that we're trying to access, really. That's where we go. It could be a community centre, etc. And then also creating priority access to jobs. So through the programmes, we create priority access to those jobs. So the actual programme acts almost as an application form. Jamie mentioned about our track application forms are the same as a band 2 as it is for a surgeon, which is quite difficult, really, when you're looking at it. I know it takes about potentially good if you try a day or two to have a look at it. It's quite lengthy. So if you're asking somebody at band 2 who may have literacy needs and you're asking for so much information, it's quite difficult. It puts people off. That's where we're losing people as well. Jamie also mentioned about the salary comparisons. So we're competing with retail outfits who are paying more for band 2 healthcare assistant, for example. So what can we do to offer better opportunities? We're looking at sort of creating that priority access, as well as local working around the localities as well that they live in. So that leads to locality based activities. So I just wanted to give you an example of something that we did in Oldham. We worked within a ward where it's very, very deprived, one of the most deprived in the country. but it's in the same ward as a Royal Oldham Hospital, but not many people from that ward were working in Oldham Hospital. So we did a bit of research and found that out. So we actually worked with a community centre as well as a mosque to engage people. And honestly, there were about 60 odd people who were interested in that program, and at the end there was 30 something people actually completed the program. I wanted to learn a bit more about why and how they sort of learnt about the program, and it still sticks in my mind. One of the learners said that they heard about the program in the graveyard. I thought, I want to reach people, maybe not the dead, but it was quite, so the word of mouth had gone around and people were interested in coming on board on the program, and the actual retention rate on that program was really good, as well as progression rate as well into jobs. And after the program, in terms of Northern Care Alliance, we actually offer some work experience placements that acts as almost like a working interview, and then people are slotted into potential positions, as well as I know Jamie does something similar as well. In MFT. Can we go on to the next slide, Sue? Right, so some of the stakeholders, and not all that I've mentioned on here, that we do work with are local authorities, community volunteer sector, faith sector, and housing associations. They do help us a lot in terms of navigating through the different communities and cohorts, and supporting us to access them as well. And in some cases, for funding as well, we do a lot of collaborative work with access to funding as well. So I mentioned about the faith sector one. It was one of the first ones that, you know, I don't know anybody that worked so closely with the mosque and was able to do that. And from then, this was about 3 years ago, we were still in COVID restriction period time, but it worked so well. We've continued to work with them going forward, and almost when's the next program? How are we going to help us? It's opened up a pipeline, really. It's been really good. And housing associations and other organizations that really support us. They want their tenants to get into employment, to be able to pay their rent, etc., or better their employment. So that's another way of working with organizations such as them. Can we go on to the next program, please? So in terms of cross-sector recruitments, I'm not going to go into that. That's for Sue, because I'll spoil it, but we've worked really closely with Sue on this program. Right, thanks, Sue.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rahima. And thanks both of you for coming along today. Rahima and Jamie are really experts in the field in this space in GM. So if you do have any questions about any of the things that have been discussed today or anything else in relation to it, you know, they're the good points of contact in terms of asking for some of those exploring some of those challenges, I guess, and also some of the solutions. We've only touched upon some of the work that's been going on in this space today, but there's a whole world of information behind it. So if you are interested in terms of taking some of that learning back to your own organisation, just do get in touch. But as Rahima said, I'm going to just share a case study with you today. And this is some work we've done in close. So I'm Sue Howard. I work at NHSGM. And our team have been linking closely with Rahima and the team at the Northern Care Alliance to deliver some cross-sector recruitment events, which I'm going to tell you about today. So rather than telling you and describing them myself, we've actually created some nice little videos in response to the first event that we did, and I'm going to actually let them, those participants and those people that were involved in that event, to actually tell you about them. So just bear with me while I share the video, because it won't let me do it in Menti. Hoping the IT works again for me. One second. It's not playing ball today. Hopefully this will work now.
So what's happened here today is we have invited ourselves and our partner organisations. So we've got residential care, domiciliary care, and the council. And what we're doing is we're talking to residents about what job opportunities we've got, and ideally we're asking people to complete an application form, have a chat to our staff to see if it's a position for them, have an interview, and hopefully get a successful outcome, which is to get a job. And that's what we're trying to do all in one day.
It's been fantastic. I mean, we've had a massive turnout today. It's been great to see different people come through the doors and actually try and find a job, and just to meet people, talk, spend the time and look at the individual needs of the person and what they really want to do in terms of their job prospects. So we're here today to offer our coaching services. So I'm here with 2 of our coaches who've been helping the women to prepare and feel a bit more confident going into an interview today, and also to network, meet other organisations that we could work with, and promote our support that we offer. Today, especially with it, the process is quite fast. You could potentially walk in here, speak with an employer, and then go into an interview, and then potentially, hopefully, be offered the job there and then, which is amazing. It's a great opportunity.
I just want to say thank you to the Neckcare Alliance. Thank you to Salford, and thank you to everyone that has made this possible, because I'm a happy bunny today, because if this wasn't arranged, I don't think I would be a happy bunny. So I'm really looking forward to starting my new job. Probably this year or fresh start next year, and then progress in my career. Thank you.
So I'll just bring the Menti slides back up. So this was from an event that we ran at the back end of last year, so in December, and we also ran another session in Oldham in January as well. So we've done these 2 one-stop shops, we called them, in these 2 localities. They were so well attended. We were bowled over, really. We had over 500 people coming through the door on the days of those events. The events were very much focused on entry-level roles, healthcare support workers and the like, but it was very much about cross-sector representation. So we had primary care, social care providers, a big presence from the Northern Care Alliance themselves, the colleges, a whole range of people there, many of them recruiting on the day, had vacancies to interview on the day. But in other cases, it was perhaps signing up for further information. They could roll onto another course, explore alternative career pathways, look at pre-employment programmes. And like I said, for many of them, we actually interviewed them on the day and they could go away with a job offer. They were really popular with both the people attending as candidates and organisations themselves as well. The feedback was really positive. They were really bowled over by the high quality of candidates attending, which was fantastic. So some of the key stats, and this is just provisional at the moment because we're still chasing up some of the downstream interviews, etc., to get the full data. But as I mentioned, around 500 people attended both of these 2 events. 143 were offered jobs on the day, and then about 188 candidates had interviews scheduled for after the event. And that really came about primarily because of the volume of people that came through the door. We just couldn't interview them all on that day, and that's something we want to improve on in the future, try and get that throughput much higher so we can interview more in the flesh at that time. There was a whole load of people that were perhaps not quite job ready that were given opportunity to sign up to all different other opportunities like the pre-employment programmes or volunteering opportunities as well. So some of the benefits that we've detected from this work, the evaluation is still ongoing, but just to give you a sense of some of the things that we'd identified through this work, it was very much targeted, because they were entry-level roles, at people potentially new to the sector, not exclusively, but it hopefully would allow us to bring in fresh blood into the health and care system rather than, pinching from Paul to pay Peter, for example. We had an ethos around valuing lived experience and not, you know, sometimes we have a habit in the health and care system, don't we, by saying you need 3 years experience to do this. How do they get in the first place? And we were very much embracing lived experience on this day, on the day of the events. And it allows us to access a wider cohort of people that may have, for example, had some caring responsibilities with a family or, you know, a relative that they've looked after a number of years and perhaps been out of work, or childcare, had a break, all sorts of reasons. There were some fantastic people there, and for a variety of reasons, they just needed a step in to get into the system. It also minimises IT access and literacy barriers for people that might have that as a challenge. We believe there is a reduced time to hire. We're still looking at the stats at the moment, but because we get rid of the shortlisting process, it potentially removes that big step. And as Jamie, I think, mentioned earlier on, our application forms are really long, and that takes a long time to sift and shortlist people, so it can potentially reduce quite a big chunk of time in this process. Again, we're doing some analysis, but the reduced hiring costs are looking really significant. I don't want to cite numbers today because we are wanting our key stakeholders involved in the evaluation to check that data, but it's looking like it's significantly cheaper to hire, even taking in all the preparation that's required to deliver these large events. It's looking a lot cheaper because it takes less time to actually hire people in large numbers doing it through this route than the traditional approach where you take the shortlist, they apply the shortlist, etc. Therefore, it also potentially has reduced impact on clinical teams because we're not having to pull them out of the hospital to do separate interviews. We're doing it in a one-stop shop and hiring potentially multiple people on one day. And also recapturing candidates. So ordinarily, we'd probably only recruit 1 or 2 people to a post through a set of interviews. This way, even if they actually seem like a really good candidate and maybe weren't successful for that particular post, we can say, go to the next table along the hall in the event, and it might be a better fit, or there might be more opportunities available. So we can catch some of them fantastic candidates who we'd lose ordinarily. It also has the potential, it's not something we've directly explored through these events that we've done so far, but it also allows organisations to consider strategic recruitment, like making sure that underrepresented groups are appropriately represented for their cohort of patients, etc., that they're caring for. Just going to go quickly back onto Menti again. So if you can pull it back up, so go to menti.com, pop in that code, or just refresh if you're still on it. See if mine's still on. And the question we're next going to ask you is, if you were to do a recruitment event in your space, and I'm conscious that we'll have a real range of people here, but if you're, you know, from whatever sector you're in, whatever role you're in, if you put yourself in, you know, that shoes, if you were to have a stand at that kind of event, or if you were to take part in the planning of such an event, is there anything in particular? I'd be intrigued to hear what you would find as a bit of a barrier. And they'll all differ because you'll all have different barriers and challenges. Just give you a few minutes to have a little think and enter a response there. I'm hoping the tech works this time. Just give you a little bit more time for entering, because I know it takes a few minutes to type in. Staff being able to attend the event on the day because they've got other pressures, whether they be clinical or otherwise. Absolutely, quite a few responses coming in now. Getting people to accept candidates that have been interviewed by someone else. We know that's an issue. Sometimes we're having to pool people rather than pulling people from each ward. And that's a big trust element, I guess, in this kind of process. Time and money, yes. I'd agree with that. And our experiences of these events is that although it takes a long time to set up the event, and there is a bit of a cost implication, it's actually quite minimal. And when you compare it to traditional recruitment approaches, it's significantly cheaper and quicker. It just, I guess there's a requirement for there to be enough vacancies to make it worthwhile. And that's why we've come at this from this cross-sector approach. Because firstly, it gives you a lot of vacancies in one space, and you can just come in and tap into that as an organisation, a hiring organisation. But actually, in terms of the candidates themselves, they come in and they're not always quite sure what they're looking for, and they have a wealth of opportunities available to them. System working, I guess, I don't know what quite is meant by that, and feel free to put your hand up. I can't see the screen, so if any colleagues on there can see anyone putting their hand up, if you want to chip in with your thinking in that space. I guess in terms of system working, it's about having the connections to chip in and contribute to an event like this can be quite a challenge. No
Sue,
barriers.
there's a
Sure.
lady called Kate Hidden, I think, who's got her hand up.
Yeah, it was me. I'm from Shropshire, so we're quite a big rural county with a few different health providers, and obviously social care, health care sector and the voluntary sector, but getting everybody together to be at one event and all collaborate, and we are working as a system to do that, but it is quite a challenge. So we have recently done something around apprenticeships, which was similar, but we didn't get everybody there that we would want to get there. So that's what I meant by system working.
I definitely recognise that and assumed that was a big part in it. We've actually found that you need some project management capacity behind it to drive it forward. But if you've got someone that's a champion, I suppose, at a locality level, these things can work quite smoothly going forward. And what we're doing, and I'll come on to this in a minute, part of the reason why we're doing this is to create a model so we can share the model. This is how to do it. These are some resources that you might need or want to use as part of that process, and to share that on a freely available website, to say, if you're going to do this in your space, these are some things to think about. These are things, pitfalls to avoid, and as all the resources go to it, and hopefully it will help people deliver these again or something similar in future without making the same mistakes that we've done along the way as well. We've had a lot of learning along this journey, so we are keen to share that. Rural communities is going to be a challenge, it is, and there are certainly I would say more challenges in the space of social care and primary care because of the nature of those sectors. There's a lot of providers. So some of the things that we've been looking at are whether you can bring in PCNs to do it en masse, or federations. Some of the larger social care providers have been able to come in and hire en masse as well. So there are ways of trying to open that up as an opportunity for candidates, but still making it worthwhile for those hiring organisations, and not requiring every single hiring manager's come in on one day. That is a challenge. That's what we're trying to get away from. Getting the trust to sign up for event, it's totally recognised, and having that champion and having that driving force behind it can be a real pivotal element. Competition, that's an interesting one actually. Do you know what, on the events we didn't sense that, whether there was a ripple underneath, maybe, but actually it was very much a togetherness. There were so many candidates. I don't think anybody came away feeling like they had not accessed the right candidates. There were ways of certainly managing the space to make sure that everyone had fair opportunity to access the candidates appropriately. But actually, it didn't feel in the event itself like there was competition going on. And what we did do, and this would be share this in the resources, is have like hosts here to help sash on. I donned one on the day. And they were guiding people around. So as they came in, they were greeted, signed up, and then they came and they were, if they wanted to, they could be escorted effectively around the hall. And you have a bit of a chat with somebody. I'll give you an example. There was a chap that came in. I said to him, what are you interested in today? Is there something in particular you're looking for? And he just said, oh, I'm just after a job in care. And that was about as far as it got. We started to have a bit of a conversation about his interests, his background. Turned out he had a degree in biochemistry, and said, are you interested still in science and pathology? And he was, yeah, lit up. He was really excited by it. So I channeled him across to the side of the room to the pathology table, and they were hiring on that day. So each candidate that came in, you could have a conversation around them and channel them into the right space. And if not, they could go around and speak to some of the stall holders and get a bit of a better sense for themselves about where they might fit in that niche, but definitely didn't feel like too much competition in the events itself. That was our experience anyway. Large dropout, we did get a large dropout. There was, I can't remember the exact numbers, but there were hundreds of people that didn't turn up, but it didn't matter because they were replaced with people that had heard about it since, that had heard it about from the mates that attended in the morning, and we were absolutely deluged. So I wouldn't worry about it too from a large dropout point of view. Thanks for your feedback on that. Just to sort of finish off this element of it. So we, like I said, we have got a full evaluation underway that we're going to be sharing in due course. We are pursuing a couple of other events, and that is purely to maximise the model. We're not just repeating this it's about creating this resource pack to enable other people, and that will be available, you know, beyond Greater Manchester, so we can share it with Shropshire and other places as well. It's going to be released on the Greater Manchester Recruitment and Retention Toolkit, which is in a mid-stage of development at the moment. We're going to house it there. We'll do some publicity around it once that's launched, and we can update you in due course if you'd like to receive you know, the links to that when they become available. In these next couple of events, we're also doing a couple of extra partnerships, really. We're trying to improve the engagement in primary care, because that was an area we felt that needed a bit more development. VCSE sector as well. There've been presence from both of those, but we felt we could go a step further and engage with that sector a little further. And also the Prince's Trust are going to be working with as well. And although they primarily target 31 and under cohort, their offer on the day is actually going to be made available to anyone. And some of the stuff we've been negotiating with them about what that looks like, and for example, what some of the workshops they're going to be providing on the day is interview prep. So people quite often were sat around for a little while waiting for their interview slot. They can go into one of these workshops, get their head in the right space, and then they feel a bit more prepared when they go into the interview. So we're really looking forward to working with the Prince's Trust as well. These are some of the people that we've worked with that steered the event. We worked with a whole host of other ones that attended on the day as well, but we'll thank you to all these people that helped us run these events. And just to pop on Menti one more time, if that's all right with you. Hopefully you're all on still. Firstly, I'm just going to give a moment to asking questions. So you can raise your hand, pop it in the chat, or pop it in Menti here if you want to ask something, you know, anonymously, if you don't want to put your hand up. And I'll just pause there while some things pop up and you can have a think. And there's one final question after this, but hopefully it's quite an easy one. You will have to wave at me, somebody, Sophie or someone, if someone puts the hand up, because I can't see while I'm presenting.
No worries, I'll keep an eye on it, Sue.
Thanks. And feel free to ask any questions about some of the work that Rahima and Jamie spoke about earlier on, or indeed about the case study as well. Yes, so we have, we're in the process of following up. Particularly we're looking at, from a capacity point of view, we can't possibly follow everyone up because there was over 200 people that were actually potentially could have got a job. What we are trying to follow up with this cohort is what happened to the ones that didn't get interviewed on the day, because we think that they're the most likely ones that may have fell between the cracks, if anything. We have applied for some more funding to see if we can explore this in a bit further, in a bit greater detail, but we need some additional funding to make that happen. It would be really interesting to see what happened to those people that were that actually got offered a job on the day as well. And the main thing, I think, for us, a main concern is about the attrition rate. So we know in Greater Manchester, the attrition rate between the job offer and them starting is huge. And then even in that first period, when they first started in post, again, it's really high compared to the national average. And we have some ideas about what that might be, but we want to explore it further. Part of the challenge, of course, is just an NHS and care ism, because it takes a long time to get people into post. They need a job now, especially at the entry level. And if they get a job offer from Asda or McDonald's or from another space and they can start quicker, you can understand why they might be looking elsewhere. And that's partly what these events are to do, try and speed up the process, get them into post quicker, and then it's not as challenging for them to have a period of no pay. The other thing just to mention as well with the Prince's Trust, and this is only for the under 31s, but they will offer them up to £500 per candidate to bridge that gap, to keep them going, to pay for the things like uniforms or support if they have to pay for the DBS. They might have additional costs like bus passes and stuff, and in that period they're going to struggle potentially for money while they're between jobs, and the Prince's Trust is going to help in that space, which is great. Anything happened for return to practice employment roles? Do you know what? I don't actually know. I don't know if Jamie or Rahima, do you have a sense if anything's happening about return to practice?
I think for me, those people, if they've got qualifications, so like if I'm assuming it's kind of AHPs and nurses, and it might have been was it you, Paula, that asked? And no, not you. Yeah, I thought it might have been. But for return to practice, that's about registrants, so they are more familiar than people in our local communities who are unemployed with where these jobs are advertised and where to go if they want one. I think maybe a similar approach. I think a similar but different approach might work, but I think that's mine. And I don't know if Rahima's got anything else to add to that, but I think for me, this is about taking jobs to people that don't know they exist, rather than kind of trying to entice people back who have had a bit of time out for whatever reason. But I think a similar approach might apply, because that confidence thing that I mentioned is probably a huge thing around return to practice, I imagine, for some people that have taken a bit of time out and feeling it. Our registrants have a lot of responsibility, don't they? I know I couldn't do it, so it's about helping them feel confident, isn't it? And maybe that informal route back in and having a bit of a chat with someone before they come and do it, speaking to someone who's done it themselves, that might help. But I'll see if Rahima had got anything else to say on that.
No, I do agree with you, Jamie, and I think in terms of different approaches, it's about getting them back into the fold and supporting with confidence and ability again. It's just another method, but at the moment we haven't really done anything. We're just testing this model out, so in the future we will be. I just wanted to go back onto the first question around following up from the day. We're certainly, I think we probably recruited the most, Sue, haven't we, at the NCA, so we're certainly following up on a continuous basis and looking at progression pathways as well. So the event was a way into the NCA, but there's a whole progression pathway being put in place for everybody that was recruited through that day, those days, really.
Brilliant. And definitely, I was just going to say that we now having worked in this space, we're being made aware of more recruitment events that are happening that we wouldn't have ordinarily been even on our radar. So there is a lot of events that are more targeted around particular niche environments or nurses or whatever, and lots of those are being delivered at a locality level or an organisational level, and they are slightly different to this model that we've used. This was very much focusing on those people, the newbies, bringing fresh blood into the system to try and relieve the pressure at the bottom. One, hopefully will have a ripple effect up, and hopefully we'll retain some of these people and they'll progress as they hopefully in their careers. So it is a slightly different approach. Just going on to the comms methods. Rahima might. Sorry, go on.
You for 1 minute, because Paula's had a hand up for quite a while.
Oh, sorry. I can't see you, Paul. I'm sorry.
That's all right, Sue, don't worry. Yeah, just going back to return to practice, it wasn't me, but there are return to practice processes in most organisations for nursing, midwives and AHPs, and there's a whole campaign around return to practice, and there's a North West meeting that takes place, so there's quite a lot of work going on around return to practice. If anybody wants to know more, get in touch with me. I'll put my details in the chat. But my question was, how do we get involved, or is there an opportunity to get involved as AHPs to you know, have a place at these events? Because we've got, obviously there's 15 professions, each of which will have support workforce roles. So I know you're talking about that entry level, so bands 2, 3, 4. And I think it would be really interesting to showcase some of those less well-known support work roles. And how do we go about getting involved in that as AHPs?
Definitely drop me an email and we'll link you in, Paula. We'd love to have you there. I think that's one of the real gems of these events, because people came in with not much idea, or actually sometimes quite a fixed view, and they changed their mind as a result of speaking, and they just hadn't got a clue about what, you know, the breadth of opportunities available. And I think that, yeah, that's one of the beauties of it, really. So we'd love to have you there. We'll obviously would have had AHP feeding roles in there as part of the past event, but it would be really great to have a really dedicated space to say, look, what's the opportunities are here. Do you know, and that's what partly interests people getting in, the opportunities in the future. Where can they go? What's next? And that'd be fantastic. Do you want me to just cover the comms stuff, or is anyone else there waiting with a question?
Jamie got a hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to come in on the kind of support worker roles, because I think that the AHP roles are not, again, you have to be careful how you say this, because all the professions are important and interesting. But I think the support worker roles are a bit more specialist than some of the nursing assistant roles. And for some people, that's actually, it could be what they're actually looking for. They just didn't know it existed, because I didn't know really about the AHP support worker roles until quite a bit after I started working in the NHS, because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of them. I think that's maybe one of the issues, is the volume. But I think the other thing with this event, and I'm sure Sue and Rahima will back me up, there's probably quite a few people there that were considering access courses and considering further study. It's not just people that are looking for immediate work. And again, with our kind of and I know there's loads of work around apprenticeships, aren't there, in the AHP arena. So again, it'd be a really good opportunity to showcase that. It's just that if there's people's time to come out to the event. But again, I meet a lot of parents when I go to school events. To be honest, the last few school events I've done, I've spent more, that have been ones where parents are there. I spent more time talking to parents that are wanting to do access courses and are wanting to study nursing and other routes than I have actually talking to the kids, which is fine. But yeah, just on the comms bit, I guess kind of I can kind of start picking that up, and I'm sure you can kind of add to that. But it's all the people that Rahima mentioned on that list. Like, if you just put these events on NHS Jobs, only people who look on NHS Jobs are going to turn out. It is actually making those links with the communities, and actually physically getting stuff stuck up, which I know is time consuming, but that's kind of what helps. Like, people see things, doing them in places where people are passing, again, working with housing associations, DWP, all the employment support agencies, of which there are numerous in Greater Manchester, because we've got really high unemployment rates or high rates of people on 0 hours contracts, universal credit, all of that. So I don't know, Rahima, if you've got anything else to add, but it's basically trying to put it in places where we don't normally, isn't it?
Yeah. No, yeah, I completely agree with you, Jamie. There, I don't know if I can add anything else. Or just answering also Sarah's question on there about non-clinical type of roles. We actually intentionally went for clinical support roles, entry-level roles, just for the sheer number of people that attended on the day, and not to confuse people as well. It was more about targeting. We are looking at non-clinical roles as a separate event. Really, we did have in Oldham a lot of people come through, where we're supporting them on separately to get into an NCA through that. We had, I think, about 30 to 50 people on the day asking for admin jobs, and we didn't want to turn them away, which we haven't done, but we will have an event for non-clinical roles in the future.
Brilliant. And just in terms of comms, I just wanted to add, I think our assessment is the DWP link is absolutely fundamental. That's what drove a lot of people in. That's where they'd heard about it. There was a lot of word of mouth. There was some leaflet dropping, but I suspect that those first things I mentioned were fundamental. We had actually tried to, lined up loads of social media advertising, and we took our foot off the gas because we had so many people interested. We were oversubscribed before we even started on social media. So what I would say is, don't be concerned that this is a full-time job in itself to advertise it. If you put it out there, I think people will come, is the reality. But the DWP link is probably fairly fundamental. Have we got any more questions before we just finish off?
No, none
We're
from any
done?
participants, just Rahima.
Brilliant.
I was just going to mention, Sue, about the communications. A link to DWP as well as the local authorities is essential to reaching out to the right target or cohorts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really good. Just to finish off, because I'm conscious of time, and what I'll do is I'll just leave this up and you can contribute to it. So our last question to you as a parting gift, thank you for attending today. It's been really good, a really good discussion. If there's anything you would do differently now as a hearing about some of the work that some of the ideas that we've shared today, if you wouldn't mind sharing those, just take a minute and pop them in the Menti for us, and it just helps us collect impact, think about how we might help people in the system going forward, anything we could do to help you. If you would like to link in with us going forward, you can pop that in there. I will leave it open for a little while, so you've probably got about half an hour to add to it. And thanks for joining us today.
Lovely. Thanks for everyone for joining. Thanks, Sue. And I'll share the
Thanks, everyone.
slides and the video upload with you all.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye.
I think that was all right.
Yeah, it went well, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I didn't see how many numbers we got in totality. Is it about 15 or something like that? Don't know if you checked while it was going on.
Yeah, I think so. About 10. Yeah, there was at least
10
at
to
one
15,
point.
I would say.
Yeah, at one point there was at
Yeah.
least 15 people on, but I think that includes us, doesn't it? And Sophie.
Yeah.
Okay, great, that's good numbers. I think Sophie's still recording this actually. Don't know how to stop. Do you know how to stop it?
No.
I don't. Stop recording.
No, it looks like it's not
Stop.
recording on mine.